reflections. Oh, excuse me. Worst time for a burp.
Yeah, pretty much. What a great introduction. Hello, everybody.
So, the stream that we did yesterday
Yeah, we did a stream.
on my channel. Yeah, on my
Obviously on your channel. I'm gonna do it on my channel. Let's be honest.
we could have done.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess it's content for somewhat.
True. So for reference on everyone else, I asked John. Well, I told John about my personal reflections, and he seemed to agree that the stream with Obsidian was hard to do because there wasn't much to talk about.
Yeah, it was super like, here is what I have. There we go. It's fairly self-explanatory. Whereas when we did Notion streams, we had to go into all of the details and showing all of this and all like we could have done it as a 20-minute live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Would have maybe lost some of the tiny, really nitty-gritty details that we got, but we could have done it in that time. And I basically showed what I think is my entire space, like my entire vault. I don't think I really, yeah, pretty much everything was shown that was relevant and interesting.
Yeah, because we had the folder system. You had your folder system. You had all the plugins. We went through the plugins. There were a couple in there that I was like, interesting. But yeah, went through the community plugins, then went through the main like daily page, went through your projects page, which is just a database folder page, which it's just so simple. You don't really need. Oh, we didn't talk about the setup of that, but then anyone can go watch the video and it explains. Oh, actually, while we're on that, I forgot to mention in the stream. Have you seen the recent update to DB folder rollups?
No, I don't. I haven't used them really.
So the rollups now can do. So previously it was just the original value, a couple of sums and time stuff. They can now do like 7 or 8 different things, but they can roll up tasks. So you've got the task query inside of the DB folder where you can just show the data view of the task on the page. You can now roll up tasks. So if you have a task in a project page, i.e., like tasks in the project, you can roll them up in the view anyway, but you can then roll them up in your goal or in your quarter, month, or your larger project. And I haven't tested this, but if you think forwards, you could have a file as a task, and then inside that file as subtasks, and another file can be a project. And using the relation and rollup properties inside DB folder, you can have subtasks rolled up to the big project. Yeah.
For audio listeners, that was an ooh face. That was a oh really? Because that's cool.
No, I couldn't work out how I would use the task rollup, but that's where I was like, actually, subtasks. And you can have essentially subtasks because they're all the same thing. It's just the same thing done multiple times. So if you can visualize this for DB folder users, if you're not DB folder, I will try and explain it. You have a table, a database table, and each row is a file. Each file will have tasks on the page. And those tasks can be found inside of the DB folder using the task property, which is a default property anyway. Those tasks show. If in those tasks you have a link to a page file, then that file can be related inside of the DB folder. So you've got the file with tasks in. The relation will then have the other tasks in, and you can hide the relation property, use the rollup, and show the tasks inside of those files. So then you'd have 2 properties, a task property, so the main tasks, and then inside of those tasks have subtasks in the page, and the rollup would then show all of the subtasks.
That's super cool.
I don't know why you'd want to see all of the subtasks in a massive project, but it's doable.
You don't, but still, that is pretty cool.
And I'm sure there's other use cases out there as well.
That is pretty cool. I quite like that. I installed and played with that plugin which makes
Supercharged
emoji.
links.
Yeah, I love it.
It's good, isn't it? Have you done the tick thing that I told you about?
I haven't done the tick thing yet.
Okay. It's so satisfying when you tick something off and that actually shows on the page like done. Like yes.
I've liked, so one thing I've added is to all of my dashboards. I've added like a background so I can differentiate it, like having a background color. So you can, and same with the databases. I've classed my databases as almost like dashboards. Because that's kind of what they are. By databases, I mean DB folder, obviously, if people are listening. But yeah, it's really nice just to see the different colors and all that coming together. I really like it. It's so good.
What I've found, so all my databases are yellow with a database icon at the front. And what I found is when I'm going through my Quick Switcher plus, because I'm using that at the moment, which is really nice, it's so much easier to find pages. Like when I'm looking for note taking, I type in note taking, and because I have lots of pages with note taking in, sometimes it's 2 or 3 down. But because my articles, which are the working notes, are orange and my source notes are blue, I immediately know which is the one I'm looking for because it's an article page. And when I'm looking for a database, I immediately know where it is because if I type in videos, anything with video in the title is going to appear. But most of them are going to be blue, and then there's just going to be this yellow line in the quick search. I'm like, yep, that's the one I want. And it makes searching so much easier.
It's also just nice visually. I just very much enjoy opening up and seeing a little project folder on all of my projects, and it's just it's really nice. I just enjoy it. Just that slight visual flair, just to make things a little bit, break things up a little bit, which is where I'm at now. Is just making things visual.
Yes, yeah. I am curious because obviously I'm going to do the video with the columns at some point soon. Is that something that you're looking to do inside of your vault? Add some columns?
Yes.
Because something that I noticed when I wanted to add columns is this is like when I was realizing when I was adding columns inside of Obsidian, I've always been narrow. Always been in the narrow view, and inside of Notion, I could not manage the narrow view. I had to be in the wide view. But now I've got columns, I'm in the wide view. And for Obsidian users, wide view is readable line length inside of the editor tab, settings tab. So you go to the editor tab, I think it's the second section down, and then it's at the top called readable line length. If you tick it on, then it'll be narrow. If you tick it off, then it'll be wide. Yes, I've been in the settings too much.
On a per page basis?
No.
Okay, so it's either on or off.
Yeah, it's on or off at the moment. Yeah, it's toggled on or off at the moment. Certainly something that I would explore inside like the future updates and stuff. But I mean, they're bringing the corkboard view to Obsidian. That's what they're working on at the moment. So who knows what'll happen. But yeah, so I'm with the columns, I'm using the wide view. And when I moved to the wide view, my Notion brain suddenly kicked in, I guess you could say. And I was like, oh, I could have more than one column. And oh, I could add this and add that. And now my daily note is a better version of what I had in Notion.
That's intriguing. Because your Notion, like, that it would be, wouldn't it? So is it kind of like what was originally your Notion homepage? Kind of thing.
My Notion homepage is my daily note, but it's organized in a way that I want it to. It shows the information that I want it to, and I don't have to faff around with formulas and roll-ups and roll-ups and roll-ups and formulas that don't work because roll-ups don't give the right information, etc., etc. I can just query it.
So nice.
And obviously, I don't need a synced block because block IDs. But I don't really need the sync block anyway as the title tab bar because each day it's generating a template which already has that in there. What I will say though is I've stopped using it in my daily note because when you change the filters in a DB folder filter, if you forget to add a group filter because my databases are in a folder, if you hover over the page and go page preview, it tries to page preview my entire vault. because that's what DB folder's looking at. And obviously, Obsidian goes, give me a minute or like 10. So I just closed it down and then reopened it. And Obsidian's like, yeah, you're cool now because you're not trying to preview your entire vault of all the information. So I've taken that out of like the actual page and just used the start panel instead. Just
Nice.
a lesson there.
Yeah, now that I've got the basic stuff, I think I was saying this to you right from the beginning of like, I just want to make sure it works first before I start investing the time in the kind of cherry on the top sections, which is where I'm kind of at now. I'm like, this works. I use it all the time. I know what I'm doing now. And now I'm going to go play. Because and I think this is also hot take. I think this is actually easier to play in Obsidian because things don't really break in the same way as they do in Notion.
I think the only way you can really break a setup in Obsidian is by doing a bulk delete of something. Like if you bulk delete a tag or bulk delete a folder, well, yeah, now you've lost the files. But if you've got a backup, you can just restore the files.
Yes, I think that, but that's any thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I
tried to find a negative, okay?
Yeah, but it's anything does that. That's the it's just so nice to not have to worry if I go in and play with stuff. I can just go, oh, cool, yeah, no, I'll fix that. Dealt with.
This is one of those things that I find interesting with the whole YouTube creator dynamic between viewer and creator. People ask me questions in the comment section of videos, and most of the time, not gonna lie, I don't know the answers. A lot of the time I know the answers because they're talking about the video and it's kind of like surface information. But when they're asking about specific nuanced use case, I'm like, I don't know. I just go into a test vault and figure it out. Like, and when updates come out, I do the same thing. I use the test vault and try and figure it out. I think Nicole recently did a video on multiple vaults. Nicole van der Hoeven. I don't know how you say her last name, but yeah. She did a video about multiple vaults. Hot take, I don't like the length of the video. I think it could have been much, much shorter. But she talks about having multiple vaults and 90% of her notes being in one vault. And the use cases that she gave for having another vault, one of the use cases I didn't quite understand why she has a source reference vault outside. That doesn't quite make sense because then you can't source it inside of your notes, but she's doing something different in Obsidian, so that's her preference. But all the other use cases were essentially just testing stuff out. It's like experimenting with what Obsidian can do, can't do. Does it suit this? Does it suit that? I do it all in one vault because it's much easier because I can link everything and search everything.
Yeah.
I still have a test vault. The only other vaults, I guess you could say I use are the template vaults with the help templates. So it's easier to download rather than downloading a vault that has everything in. So that's just an onboarding preference. And then my course, because I need my course separate because I might do a video on my course management because it's like using DB folder has made it so easy.
I bet. I just imagine that. Yeah.
But yeah, and the course is another vault. So basically I have 2 vaults plus a load of random spare vaults that I create purely just to make downloads easier. And to test stuff. Like I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
This is like the stream. It's like Obsidian's easy. Yeah.
But I wouldn't. It is easy, but only because we really know what we want to do.
True.
I mean, that's true with everything, but you've just got to know what you want to do.
So this is something I've noticed on the video I posted Thursday. I put no code in the thumbnail and I got more clicks and I got more views. And when I look around Nicole's videos, her no code cheat sheet also got more clicks and views. Now, when I think about Obsidian, I personally don't think of code. I think Markdown, but that's the same as Obsidian. It's the same as Notion. It's the same as like every note-taking app that's any good. So I wonder. I think I think there is a stereotypical view, preconceived notions, prior knowledge, whatever you want to call it, people thinking that Obsidian is a codey tool. Now, I understand it from the way that it used to look because it showed all the markdown. But I don't think you need to know code at all to use it.
No. You can activate slash commands and then you basically just use those.
I mean, I'm debating about doing a video like a kind of like a Notion transition vault, because you could say, like, have data view and DB folder installed. Never use data view, just use the DB folder because that pushes buttons. You don't have to know what query language is. You don't even have to touch it. Then
That's not a bad idea, actually.
and just explain using the slash commands, because it is Notion. If you're in live preview, it functions the same way as Notion. It's just if you click on a file, if you click on a block or a line, you see the markdown, which I actually like more than Notion, because in Notion, if you want to change something, you're like, oh, I need to go to the settings, which one's change heading, which is why I remembered Control Shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, because it was only 3 headings at the time. I had to remember those because whenever I wanted to go down a heading, I was like, I either need to push 2 hashes and then space, which is what you do in Obsidian anyway, or I need to use the shortcut, which again, I can do in Obsidian anyway.
Yeah. I just think it's getting easier and easier. And I think that's quite interesting, like you talking about the marketing side of things, because that's something that I have been thinking again about in my businessy stuff. Like it's really top of mind for me, because I'm in the process of setting up something new. And one of the things that keep coming up is making it easier to just to making it easier to one, market, and like releasing like that pressure on that, because you have to do a lot of it and it's boring. It can feel really boring. And you were talking about, like, because your viewpoint, based on my understanding, is that like the no code thing feels a little, does it feel a bit clicky?
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like no code is playing at the strings of the assumptions of beginner users or non-users of Obsidian. And it's not wrong, because it is using no code. And Obsidian is a no-code tool, but I don't think no-code is the right word to use because it still requires code. I think, who was it? It was Sarah Dici tweeted, I don't understand why these no-code apps call themselves no-code when I have to understand code to use them. She was trying to do something a little bit more advanced inside of Notion, and Thomas Frank said, yeah, I agree. And then he replied with his API thing with Notion. It's like an hour video on how to use APIs inside of Notion. You're like, yeah, you need to know code for this, even though Notion's a no-code tool. Because he was using something. What is it? I can't remember. It begins with an H.
Drive?
No, well, Pipedrive was there, but it was something else as well. Anyway, it was using API keys and doing code, writing basic JavaScript to get the API of elsewhere into, I think it's like have, or I can't remember what it is. Something.io, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, so the
.io doesn't really narrow anything down these days.
Yeah, I know. But Sarah's tweet, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, you're right. The no-code app aren't no-code app, they're low-code.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for marketing, no-code's the new buzzword, the thing.
Yeah, because this is what I've been talking about. So obviously, a lot of my clients happen to identify with that word that you absolutely love, neurodiverse. And it's like, yeah, I guess. And that's where I've got to, and it's all your fault. Like, yes, I do identify, but it's not everything about me. It is like a subsection of how I show up in the world, especially with looking into the philosophy stuff that Yeah. The reflective practices has been very interesting. And horrible. I hate it. Thanks.
We can get onto it in a minute.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is the marketing, like my future marketing. And most of my clients are some flavor of neurodiverse. When I say neurodiverse, my definition includes things like autism, ADHD, depression, anxiety, all of these things that stop you doing the things you want to do is the way I'm going to call it that. I don't like that term, but it's the easiest possible way of putting it simply. And it's like, and something that my business coach said to me the other day was, "You're making it too hard on yourself." And I'm like, yeah, because it would be easier just to market to neurodiverse people.
Is that what they said? The coach said you're making it too hard on yourself?
Yes.
I don't like that.
Say more. I'm intrigued.
I don't like that at all, because what you're dealing with is a moral dilemma.
Yeah.
It's a moral dilemma of your beliefs, your values, things that you hold dear to you, and actions that you don't necessarily agree with. So being too hard on yourself, I don't think is right at all. I think you're doing exactly what you're meant to be doing. I think you're reflectively considering, debating, arguing with yourself about your morals and whether you're going to stick to your morals or whether you're going to bend them to gain something else, and whether your personal philosophy towards these ideologies should be held or shouldn't. So I don't think you're being hard on yourself at all. I think you're doing exactly what you're meant to do as a reflective practitioner, and challenge, okay, do I want to hold my morals, or do I need to adjust my morals and my philosophy of practice in this context? And in which case, you have a philosophy of practice for your marketing and a philosophy of practice for your coaching. So the way that I would approach it personally, if I was in your situation, is I have a different set of morals for my philosophy of practice in marketing because of the environment that I'm in, the competitive environment that I'm in.
Yeah, because that's exactly that. This has been my reflective practice over the last week or so of okay, my contexts are very different, especially in the marketing. There are so many. And where I'm at now is I'm coaching. I will still call myself a simplicity specialist because it's a sexy marketing phrase, but I'm coaching. Literally, that's what I'm doing. And as a coach, how do I wish? I'm less interested in the label and more interested in the details for me, really understanding how they function, because there is that I'm no longer using neurodivergent. It is a subtle shift for me, but divergent means that there's something wrong, and I'm working on removing neurotypical from the way that I communicate because I don't like it. It's the us and them mentality, which I think is what your big
argument.
Against that. Your argument against that. And I agree.
I'm not sure whether divergent is wrong, because you said
I don't have that it's wrong. It just doesn't.
No, that's what you just said. You said neurodivergent, there's something wrong. That's what you said. It says there's something wrong. I think that's the stereotypical view because of the labels social media and the general public have put on it.
That is the label that's been put on. I don't align with that phrase at all for me. And the neurotypical versus non-neurotypical, neurodiverse versus neurotypicals. How do neurotypicals cope? And it's I get what you're trying to say, but it's overly simplified. It's overly simplified.
I'm using that word so much.
Yeah, and me too. It's so oversimplified. How do you neurotypicals deal with it? Yeah, but that's not quite, and that is not to take away from the real struggles we have. They are real, but we all have struggles. They just look differently. It's just we found a label for them.
I don't think they look differently. I think they look exactly the same. Because a struggle is a struggle.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
like
I think the process of dealing with the struggle, the process of dealing with the problem looks different. Um, yeah. When it comes to this sort of thing with the marketing, my mind immediately goes to when you're marketing, you're essentially talking to a beginner, right? How would I explain this concept to a beginner? Because however you explain the concept to a beginner, it's going to create conceptions. Whether they're misconceptions or not, they're going to create some sort of conceptual understanding of what it is that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So my personal gripe with using neurodivergence all over the place is people immediately gain misconceptions about what it means to be neurodiverse by using the word. And that's not me saying, oh, there's misconceptions. It's the general science between what neurodiverse is and what the socially accepted neurodiverse is are different. And you can see that through TikTok, because people on TikTok say, you have ADHD if you do this thing. No, that's one symptom that people may have or may not have. That's not what neurodiverse means. So it's drastically oversimplified there. Yes, they're shorter videos, but change the video, don't do the video.
There are people on TikTok that are fantastic at actually using the science. There is a number of them who are pretty good at talking
the science
about
that's
it.
out there.
So, well, yeah. There's obviously they have bias and blah 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 blah, but in in comparison to a lot of the TikTok stuff, there's a lot of misinformation on neurodiversity on TikTok, which is just gross simplification. That it is overly simplified. You have ADHD if you're this, you have autism if you're that, you have this if you're this, you're neurodiverse if this, and it's just not as simple. And we don't. I was saying this to a friend of mine. It's not as simple as either your X or your Y. It's not the list of symptoms overlap annoyingly.
Comorbid.
Look at that word.
Yeah,
They
they're
are
comorbid.
comorbid.
Yeah, there's comorbidity within
Right.
neurodiverse, neurodevelopmental disorders. Using the DSM-5 right there. Using the
I
DSM-5.
don't
That's
like.
so. I want to do a video about all of this stuff, but it's going to have to be a video essay.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be like an hour long.
I cannot wait for it. I'm really intrigued,
I've
and I think it's.
been trying to plan it out for like 3 months.
And I think it's an interesting conversation because you have when a lot of my own philosophy is around individualism and everyone has a unique experience. Everyone's experience is unique. So with that in mind, everybody is neurodiverse, which is what my brain went, oh, well, that's interesting. Which is correct, but with the kind of misconceptions that exist on what it means to be neurodiverse, that is where the language isn't quite ready.
So you've read the chapter on a reflective practitioner. How would you challenge that? Because my immediate thought is, when you said there's a meaning, there's a different meaning behind it. Well, a meaning means there's a line somewhere. Someone has drawn a line. Who's drawn the line? Who sets the parameters? And who maintains the line?
It is very much a societal. It's the big S.
But who? Because I would argue that society are maintaining it, but who built it to start with, and who keeps the line there? Who keeps it stable? Because society,
people who identify with that identity.
And where do they find it? How do they find out what the line is? Where do they learn it from?
I suppose other people who identify with that identity.
Which goes back to where?
Where does it go?
The original diagnosis.
Oh.
So the line of what neurodivergence is the original diagnosis of...
Which is awful.
Precisely my point. everyone is building an argument on a line of diagnosis, but the line of diagnosis is really poor. It's not a line. It's a faded thing that covers like most people. And when you look at the bias inside of the diagnosis as well, you ask more questions, which really gets you to think, okay, so where is this line of neurodivergence? Oh, wait, there isn't one. So what are we really arguing for or against? And the way that I see it is there isn't an argument for or against it. You're making up arguments on things that you have made up yourself. And I say you as in anyone going for or against the thing. You have or don't have ADHD, whatever. Most of those arguments are on shady lines. Yes, there are some diagnoses that are solid lines. I don't want to say solid because they're not. They're still a little bit blurry. But there are obvious things that people can do, can't do, struggle with more than others. But why do we have to label that thing? And I don't want to get too into the gender ideology, etc., etc., etc. But Philosophy Tube is a very good philosopher, and they are transgender. But all of the philosophical arguments that they push forwards are for everyone, not just that group of people. But we love, as a society, whatever reason, to group people together. So when you're doing reflective practice, are you looking, I would class as evaluation? Are you just evaluating what you see and going, that's them, that's us, this is the argument, this is good, this is bad? Or are you reflecting on your argument and going, this is bad, okay, why is this bad? Well, because there is a line. Well, where was the line built? And you start digging deeper and actually reflecting on your views and your thoughts, and it is uncomfortable. Reflection is not meant to be comfortable.
Thank you, I hate it. It was really valuable just to start looking into it. Like, one of the exercises was to put your values down and then order them, and I'm like, oh, that is not as easy as you think. And it's a business thing as well, but it was so interesting to see the problems in the business coaching industry, even in the first flipping chapter that I read.
I'm just explain what this book is first.
No, got a guess. They got a guess. So I am reading Becoming a Sports Coach, which is basically what you studied.
Yeah, it's the first book that my head of course wrote and published as an academic book. He's a PhD philosophy graduate person, and basically, he's not a professor, but he's as close as you can get. And I don't think he would want to become a professor or have that label either. I can't speak for him, but the 5 years I spent in higher education with him, he's not that fond of the educational system. He plays the game because he knows he needs to. But the book, Becoming a Sports Coach, is essentially my first 2 years of undergrad. There is a second book that goes over my third years, but the second book, you can't even begin to understand what's going on in there until you grasp what becoming a sports coach means, because a sports coach, or a coach in general, is more than what a lot of people think a coach is. And you can see it in the preface of the book. But yeah, you've read the first chapter, you're like, okay, this is more than sports coaches.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the marketing.
Yeah.
It's so much. And I think we had our conversation about that. Literally, I read the first chapter, I was going, oh, now everything you do makes sense. And it was really interesting to like get an insight into why you do the things you do, because it makes more sense. And I think the reflective practitioner, like philosophy, I guess, call it that. Yeah.
It's part of someone's philosophy of practice. It builds up their ideology and their practice of how they're going to practice not necessarily as a coach, but as a person. Practitioner, meaning someone that's practicing something, typically a skill. And reflective as a process has been researched. There's tons of literature on it. And a lot of people don't look at the reflective literature. They look at the evaluation elements.
Yeah.
But it's so difficult when you ask a coach, which is I can say this now because now you've read the chapter. When I first asked John about the difference between evaluation and reflection. You didn't really have an answer, and most
No.
people don't have an answer because they're like, well, they're the same thing, aren't they? I'm just reflecting. I'm evaluating. That's good. That's bad. No, there's more than that, but it's hard to explain how there's more than that with just words and not doing something tangible.
Yeah, and even when we had that conversation, I was like, there's an assumption that I'm making there that one's good, one's bad, and I'm just like, but I don't quite like that. I don't really know why, but okay. So I'll just.
So I guess as an exercise, what would you give people listening in as an exercise if they wanted to try and dive deeper into reflective practice rather than evaluative?
Just go buy the book.
Well, I think using Sci-Hub you can find the PDF. I think that's how I got the PDF. I can't remember. It was so long ago.
Yeah, I would just get the book because I couldn't do it justice.
Yeah, I think because I'm one of those people that's far in, it's
Yeah,
hard to forget what you know.
yeah. I think like, hang on, let me open the note because I'm still like digesting everything.
And you will be for a while because it's that sort of book where there's so many ideas, there's so many things, and you're like, that's a really good point. And this is why it doesn't work with the public. Like when you think about Atomic Habits and most of Seth Godin's books, but when you think about Atomic Habits or any of those sorts of books,
I hate that book.
I know. There's one or two ideas that they push throughout the book. Building a second brain is the same thing. They push building a second brain throughout the book. Yeah, there are stories in there and there are chapters, but they push one idea. Inside of academic books, each chapter is its own idea, could be a book on its own, which is why when I said to John about reading each chapter, like each chapter is a new book. Like you could do a degree on each of the chapters in becoming a sports coach, but he's condensed it all down into one book. So it's not one of those things where you're like, oh, I'll just skip to the end. No, and you can't skip to the end, the beginning or something in the middle. It's the entire book is full of things to think about, which makes it hard to read because you can't just go, oh yeah, I'll read that in a week. You could read the words in a week. You wouldn't be able to understand what's going on in a week, which I think is what you're experiencing now.
Yeah, it is just, there is so many like things in there that I just love.
Something that I told John to do, which I know he didn't like to start with, but I said to him, just read through the book and don't explore anything or any of the
I
ideas.
hate you for that. And I also appreciate it very, very, very much because I was just like, I want that. I want to see 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 that. I want to look at this paper. Oh, this paper is interesting. Oh, look at that paper. Oh, I want to see what that does. Oh, that's interesting. It was hell. Thanks. And I do appreciate it because I can tell that I'm going to need to like just get used to. Yeah, it's
Yeah. But it's a book for a year. It's one of those books that you can go back to, see something new, spend the next month researching, then go back to the book and realize actually you interpret it slightly differently, and then do the same thing for the next month. And you're like, oh damn, half the year's gone and I'm only at chapter 1. Which is what I did first read through.
And that has been 100% my experience. I am just like, as I start reading and as I kind of go through it more, I'm just like, oh, I want to know about this, and I want to look at that. Like the reflective practice chapter has probably been the hardest one that I've had to really control myself to not look at the research, because I'm just like, oh, I want to see all of the research,
but then you go down a hole that you won't finish.
Yeah, I'm. It's nice to be dealing with a book that does that to me.
And this is one of the things about like reading books and stuff. When people say, "Oh, you need to read more books because books is where smarts people go," and you're like, "No," and this is one of the gripes that I have with all the book trackers and stuff. If you're reading sort of like fantasy novels and whatever, fine, track your books. If you're reading academic books, you don't need a book tracker. Like, I have, what's that? Nine books. And I don't need any more. I haven't even finished them. And that's not because I don't like reading, although I don't like reading actual books. I prefer reading it on a computer, which I have the PDFs for. It just takes me that long to get through. Like, the cognitive psychology book is 1,000 pages. Yes, it's a lot of pages. I could read the book in a month, easy. I could read I could read the words in the book, easy, in a month. I would argue I've finished one chapter, maybe.
Mm.
But I keep going back to it, and it's the approaches to human cognition. I know the approaches to human cognition. I know the different fields that are in there. But now I'm reading another book. I haven't finished that by any stretch of the imagination. Same with the other books that I've got in there in my shelf. I'm now reading another book, Ecological Psychology, which is yeah.
Is it as in the ecological approaches to?
It's cognitive psychology. It's cognitive psychology, the big book, but an ecological psychology version. So
there is not the original book. Is it?
No, it was a recent publish as of 2022. I bought the book. Don't. This is the book that I told you not to go and buy because then you'll have like no life.
I don't have a life anyway. Let me not have a life.
I'm not confirming. I'm not confirming. I'm not confirming what the book is.
Please don't do that to me. I will look. Yeah. I will Google. But I'm really.
Oh yeah. So, but I'm reading that book, and I read the first 3 pages, and my entire interpretation of like 3 chapters in cognitive psychology was challenged, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to read like 400 pages again. I'm not. I'm gonna go through my notes and try and grasp what's going on. But this is why in 2023, I want to be in my research. Like there are so many arguments I want to make for and against different things, different topics, and I don't want to be frictioned by I want to make a video on this or I'm going to do this and that and blah blah blah. So I guess there's a bit of an announcement, you could say. The content I'm making is my philosophy of practice regarding business, not research. Oh, you found it. You got a smiley face on.
There are 2 that I'm looking at, and I'm just like, which one is it?
Yeah. So with regards to pushing content, talking content,
Kindle edition of that. Sorry,
I've got Kindle edition, so it might be that one. But because obviously the Kindle highlights and it goes straight into Obsidian. Lovely.
I
know. But the front facing marketing stuff is, it's hard to talk about these sorts of arguments in front facing marketing. So I'm just going to write them. And then if people want to understand my arguments, they can go to my notes, because obviously my notes are just my arguments. And then I might make videos on them. I haven't decided yet. But because I don't want these thoughts to be clouded by how do I talk about this in a piece of content? Or how do I make a thumbnail for this? Or what's my clickbaity title? Or how do I market this to my audience? I don't want any of those questions to be involved in my thinking around this. Yeah. So I'm just keeping it to myself. Partly selfish, but partly because I know it wouldn't work. Maybe I don't want to start another channel, but maybe I put it on the second channel. But then it wouldn't really make sense for it to be on the second channel, because it's not me talking about random apps or all over the place. It's me talking about my philosophy of practice and how Obsidian helps me do that. So maybe
Patreon, though.
Oh yeah, I'll talk about it in Patreon. Well, I'll talk about the development of the research in Patreon. I won't be able to go, hey, this is what I've understood in 10 minutes, because yeah, it take far longer than 10 minutes to explain the stuff. But yeah, I can't remember where we were going with that. But yeah, there's
we were talking about the book.
Yeah, no, and then I was like, oh yeah, and then the books takes longer. What chapter are you at? You're chapter 4 now?
I think so. Let me just. I was reading it before. Yeah, I'm on chapter 4. Wrong page. It'll tell me at the top. No, chapter 6.
Oh wow, that's about halfway through the book, isn't it?
I have no clue.
How many? I think there are 4 sections, so there's around 13 chapters, 14 chapters, maybe. You can confirm. You can just tell me I'm an idiot and I'm completely wrong.
Something like that. But yeah, so I am on humanistic coaching, which is the kind of one that I'm very intrigued by.
Yeah.
I took some highlights earlier and I'm like, oh, I need to process those highlights in my head.
I don't know whether it covers holistic coaching, actually. I know it covers humanistic, but holistic is one of those topics that was spoken about on the degree loads. Holistic meaning holistic in sports coaching has been defined, and there are words that you can associate with holistic, meaning physical, cognitive, emotional, social. And they are the domains of holistic coaching. And if you're not hitting them all, then you're not holistic coaching. And the reason that those are brought up is because in like most NGB, national governing body, coaching courses, you have, take football as an example because it's awful. You have technical, tactical, physical, and social. They're the four corners. I think they might have updated it and changed it, but technical, tactical, and physical are all physically dominated. Move into that position, stand over there, run this way, be this strong. They're all physically dominated. There's literally zero emotional coaching involved in football. They don't care about the emotions of the players. It's not taught about in the courses, which obviously reduces their ability to coach. The social dilemma is mainly focused on getting players to have fun, like have fun in sessions. Like, yeah, great. What about all the other social interactions, like coach-athlete relation, parent-athlete relation, athlete-athlete relations, and then all the stakeholders in higher level sport and all the other elements. And yeah, so holistic coaching brings in a whole other dimension into what coaching is and means. Humanistic is a branch of holistic coaching that is not necessarily more in the front line, but it's more relatable for a lot of coaches. Tries to get rid of the personification that happens inside of coaching. I mean, I think the elite analogy is quite good, where the elite athlete, the elite performer, is no longer a human. They are just this object that gets paid, that gets the club paid or gets paid to play or whatever, and they're no longer this person that actually has feelings, has emotions, that does react to things in different ways. They're a professional athlete, yeah, but they're also a person. And I think it's the same inside of business.
It is. It is.
Like, I am a person behind the business.
Yeah. And often we're taught to forget that. I suppose that's an example of what happened to me with the thinking about using neurodiverse. It is like you are a business, and there isn't I suppose there is a practical brain fart. There is a reality to that. Like in business, you need to make money and have enough money to survive, and if you don't, then the business will not. Like it will be there will be consequences to that. So I think there is a real thing to what was said, but it's also greatly simplified because.
So what you've just explained is the problem with literally every governmental system, like health, education, economics, every sector inside of government. And I'm not talking UK, I'm talking global. Money runs the world. So if you don't get money, whatever sector it is, it collapses, it folds. You need people to run a sector. If the sector doesn't get money, you don't have people, you can't run the sector, it disappears. But that doesn't mean that the sector is doing what's best for the people that it's meant to be helping.
No.
Which is a bit of a dilemma, as my philosophy lecturer used to say. Andy Theodoralis was his name. I loved his last name because it was just so long. He's from Greece. But yeah, he used to say dilemma all the time. He loved the word. And it's a moral dilemma. Do you follow what you know is right to help the people, or do you follow what the money gives you, like where the money is? And yeah, you can go into politics, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, you need money to work. Like, you need money for things to run. You can't
Yeah.
you can't run something, especially a country or a continent or a globe, on hopes and wishes. You still need money in the bank to be able to pay people to do the thing, otherwise they'll get really pissed. But that means sacrificing some moral values. And when you look at the crises that are going on in the globe, they are all moral dilemmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you tackle them? I don't know.
Yeah, no. We're just two people who don't know shit.
That's everyone though.
Yeah.
Everyone's figuring out, and that's something that I recognized when I was doing a reflective practice on. So I was reflectively analyzing one of the mentors that I had. Mentors. He'd been coaching for years. He'd been a coach in a professional club for years. Not necessarily coaching, because I don't think he was. I think he was instructing activity. But he was my mentor, and I was really struggling to understand some of the points he was giving me, some of the feedback points. This is, I think it was like middle of third year. And I was really trying to grasp, okay, why has he said this to me? I don't understand how this benefits me in any way, how this benefits the people that I'm coaching in any way. And I don't understand what the point of his comment was. And what I recognized, what I like whistled it down to, was he doesn't know. Like, he didn't know why he gave the feedback. He felt this was me at the time. He thought that he just needed to give me feedback. So he gave me feedback, but he didn't really think about the feedback. He just gave it to me because I need to do this thing. I'll give it to them. And when I confronted the mentor the week after, I asked him, what did you mean by this piece of feedback? Because I've thought about this, this, and this, and this, and it doesn't quite make sense. And he said, I don't know. And I was like, you've just confirmed what I thought. You don't know why you've given me the feedback. You've just given it to me because you think you should give feedback. Which to me goes, okay, so the people that are at the top don't necessarily know what they're doing. They're just making decisions because they know they need to make decisions, which is really bad, but it's understandable. And these are the sort of reflective spirals that I went in like third year. Now, obviously, you can imagine I go a bit further, but that's the sort of questions that I'm getting to. I'm like, you're giving me feedback because you think you need to give me feedback rather than it actually being helpful. So I would rather you not give me feedback and say, I don't know what feedback I give you, than you give me feedback and it'd be useless. You apply that to a business scenario. Instead of making a decision on something, what are you going to do about it? Do you make the decision? Do you not make the decision? Because you don't know the answer?
Yeah. Yeah, it's in it, and I think I've had that in my time in business when I've done work for people, when I've been coaching stuff, when I've done coaching stuff, where people were looking for me to make the decision, which I didn't really have an answer to, and I didn't give them an answer because I didn't have it. I just thought, I don't know. I think that's really important, like from a business perspective. One of the things that I actually preface when someone starts working with me, I literally tell them I don't know everything and I'll get it wrong because that's the truth, because I will, no matter how good I am.
Setting expectations.
Yeah.
Solid, right. So with regards to the rest of the book, did you check how many pages you got left or how many chapters you got left?
No.
No, I was going to say
every time I look at it, I'm just like, oh, that's a thing to think about. Oh, that's a thing to think about, and I will just lose all of my time. So I have 90. I'm on page.
English.
96 of 221.
Okay, yeah.
It says 83 out of 96 of 221.
So I think the last few pages are going to be references because obviously it's an academic book. So I would imagine like the 21 is probably just reference pages. I don't know. I can't remember, to be honest, because I've read so many of these books, but most of like the last pages are just references. So you'll probably
there's references after each chapter.
Yeah, but there'll be a block reference page as well.
Fun.
Yeah, for all the things that are either applicable across the board, or the last chapter stuff. But anyway, yeah, so you're probably about halfway through the book. What I think would be interesting is to see your notes in some way from the book. Because obviously we've spoken about it, but some people won't have time necessarily to read through the book. Maybe you could do a book summary.
Oh, I probably will.
Because
That would actually kind of.
I know you've read some other books, and although the book summaries of those books would be nice, I'm much more interested in this one because it's sports coaching. It's not a philosophy that appeals to everyone. It's sports coaching, which is meant to be marketed. It's marketed for sport, and someone that isn't in sport looking at it.
I'm looking forward to like having my. I will probably create some form of summary.
Cool.
And
Nice.
like what I take from it as a business coach, not a sports coach.
Mm.
Because
And
I want to
maybe
get, yeah.
I was going to say maybe you can start looking at some of the sporty podcasts.
Mm.
Actually, that's something that made me giggle. Ali said he's writing his book at the moment, and Ali said in a tweet that it reminds him of his philosophy lectures back in 2014. And I'm like, psychology lessons, sorry, not philosophy, psychology lessons. And I was like, as a doctor, I really wonder how deep you went into psychology. And that's what I was thinking. Like, I did philosophy in my degree, but I had one specific module in second year, which is obvious. Well, one module over 2 semesters, which I think is more than medical anyway. And then all of my core modules had elements of psychology involved. So you're looking at like maybe 180 credits worth of psychology information. He's probably got like a 20 credit module, or maybe even a 10. I don't know. Which, yeah, it's interesting. And then he did a poll about how many people that knew what the self-determination theory was. And it's surprising that I think it was like 70-something% never heard of it. 20-something% had heard of it, but didn't really know what it was. And it was like 4% knew what it was. And I was like, this self-determination theory is one of the most, I don't want to say basic because it's not basics theory, front-facing concepts inside of motivation. And Ali's audience are meant to be productivity people. And it's all motivation. So how can you not know what it is? Yeah, it was surprising.
Yeah. I think it's because it's hot take. It's surface level. People just take the hacks and the tips and ignore the actual stuff.
Yes. Because the actual stuff requires thinking.
Yeah. And thinking's hard.
Thinking requires energy, and using energy when you don't want to is hard.
Yes.
I don't think thinking itself is hard because we do it all the time. You can't not think unless you're asleep, in which case, arguably, you're still thinking, but subconsciously.
Oh, yeah. I think you are subconsciously thinking when you are asleep.
Depending on how you define thinking and the mark of the cognitive. But yeah, we're not going to go there because we're closing out the episode. We are closing out the episode. So
we close it up. Tight up. Carry on.
Yes. No. We are now going to head over to Discord and talk about probably the mark of the cognitive and things like that. Come join us. If not, well, obviously,
I mean, we won't be
week,
talking about it like when you come join us because it's a week.
Yeah. Well, no, because in theory, yeah, we would have already spoken about it. But in theory, when they listen to this, we'll be speaking about whatever next episodes is.
Obviously, we plan our content in advance.
Totally. Right. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.